And then we need to do the periscope, right?
They're streaming 878M 72 JJ MDR YHA.
Thank you very much, DG and Deputy Minister Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize.
If you change the...
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we've got the mic
the address
in
is
order.
the stream piece
Basically,
seems it's a different address.
the Disability Rights Awareness Month
DWY.
started in 1996. And what happened at that time, we were preparing the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities, but in a manner of speaking, it was different. That one was called the Integrated National Disability Strategy. So it was a preparation for the white paper, but we were in the RDP office at that time. Then we moved to the presidency, where President Mbeki, Deputy President Mbeki at the time, actually, launched the Integrated National Disability Strategy on the 3rd of December 1997. What then happened was that President Mandela then endorsed the Integrated National Disability Strategy at the time with his cabinet. And we then had to start the work. So the main aspects would look at 15 key areas of concern. You know, that includes your education, health, rehabilitation, sign language issues, especially South African Sign Language. It would look at special schools, work centers, questions of reasonable accommodation, for instance, at the workplace, adjustments, issues around matters that relate to how you treat a person with a disability as the society. The slogan, "Nothing about us without us," basically, is the slogan that we coined in 1986. So DM, that tells you, you know, I've got almost 36 years of experience in this field. But then at that time, we actually we marched to the Department of Social Development, Welfare at that time, and to demand that our rights must be recognized. And we then produced the Disability Rights Charter, which then led to this day, as you can see. In 2013, Cabinet then approached us and said, we want to make sure that there's a month that is official in the government calendar that represents your needs, your rights, and so on. So we wrote a CAB memo. In 2013, we submitted, and the President signed, and we went on. In 2015, then we launched the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities, which is a policy now, which the Deputy Minister is using to chase those who don't do their work properly in government, and deal with them quickly, that they do their work. And that's the work that she's still doing even now. But the history of this month, basically, was more of a political history than anything else. Well, we were just doing work as civil servants, because we were expected to do the work. But it's a political struggle that came way back from 1996, as I've said. But it's one of those matters that we made sure that it becomes a national disability rights agenda of government, and also to promote awareness and things like those. So DG, basically that's the history of the month itself, of the day. On the 3rd of December, it's the National Disability Rights Day. Basically, Cabinet changed it because they felt that if we say International Day of Disabled Persons, we're not talking to everybody. So Cabinet then decided, no, that's the National Disability Rights Day. And we've gotten that Nkoana-Mashabane here as part of the Presidential Working Group. We started the work with them as far back as 2013, 2015. We formed the group, and it's now even working even now. So that's basically the history of the month and the history of the day itself. Thank you, DG and DM, for giving us this opportunity and leading us. Your leadership is very important, and we hope that persons with disabilities will also benefit from government programs basically this month as we speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Padini. I think you can hear from when he speaks that he's an expert in this area. He's an expert. Not only is he a person with a disability, but he's also an expert, not just on disability, but on policy, development, or on every aspect of government work that you can talk about. Hence, people with disabilities always say, as he said, nothing about us without us. They always say they want to contribute and to benefit from. So it's unlike their charity work where they only want to benefit from grants or whatever. They want to contribute to economic development and the economic recovery and reconstruction of the country, but also benefit like any other person. So it's important that when we deal with persons with disabilities, we know that they are not disabled, but they have a disability, and most of them have gone to school, just like us. Some of us have gone to school. Some of them may not have gone to school, but they have certain expertise. So all of them are just all of us. They are part of us. So there's no them and us. So if we can be able to understand that and start treating them like all of us, and not be and not prejudice them because of the stereotypes or whatever things that we've heard about the reasons for disabilities. I think we could have a South Africa that all of us want to be proud of. I'm not sure whether people from DPSA disability, okay, Disabled Persons South Africa, even SAD is not here. Okay, they're not here. Now I would like to take this opportunity to request Mr. Nkoana-Mashabane from Presidential Working Group on Disability to give a message of support. You can come here. Yeah.
Honorable members, Honorable Deputy Minister, honorable members from the Presidential Disability Group, leadership, various leadership from various organizations, disabled people of South Africa. I'm here to show my support for the 2020 Disability Month. That's why I was requested to come and stand here. Why? Because it's a very important day for disabled people. month, people of South Africa or disabled people around South Africa must enjoy this whole month and be involved in it. For years, we've been trying to lobby to make sure that people get opportunities and they continue with their lives. So from 3 November to 3 December, we must make sure that the public is aware of what's happening. People who are being discriminated outside that we must stop those things. So we must make sure that awareness is there. Why? Because disabled people are there. It's not just all about them, but it's all about all of us. Again, in support of the GBV, abuse of disabled people, it's not allowed. Remember, most people have been discriminated and they're being abused, so we're not going to accept that. So we're asking people of South Africa to protect the women and disabled people. We, the presidential group, we've been lobbying, making sure that all of the issues regarding disabled people, creating of opportunities, making sure that the rights that bill or the rights that we're working on become into bills, and so we've been lobbying a lot. So we've been working quite hard to make sure that everything is easier for everybody. Last month we saw regarding the South African Sign Language Charter. So why? Because the deaf community it makes it much easier for them to get access to information, like getting interpreters on TV. So yeah, we've been looking for such opportunities. So as you know, 2020, it's been a difficult year regarding the COVID-19. So most disabled people have been suffering out there, and they've been experiencing challenges all over. So as soon as now we're here, we will make sure that we protect the disabled people out there in the country. So, sorry, interpreter's mistake. All right. They've already hosted. It was just to celebrate the fact that you hosted. Oh, you hosted a workshop, and then we were there regarding the COVID-19. So the presidential group came back, and we got the report back from that. South African municipalities, departments, they must make sure that they continue to enforce the rights of disabled people and make sure that they protect disabled people around the country. They mustn't be just left alone on their own, but make sure that they're integrated in all of the programs that they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ndlovu. As a department, can somebody assist with the speaker? First of all, would like to thank you for joining us today here to come and support us, because we know that the Presidential Working Group on Disability is doing a lot of work. Also, it is assisting the department in terms of ensuring that all government departments comply with what they have to do, because the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities is not an implementing body. We do not implement, we regulate. However, all government departments need to implement whatever work that they do. They need to mainstream persons with disabilities in their work. And so the Presidential Working Group for persons with disabilities assist us to ensure that government departments report on what they're doing to ensure that they promote the rights of persons with disabilities. But also I want to ensure or assure you that the Deputy Minister, as the ministerial member who's been given the mandate to promote the rights of persons with disabilities, is doing all that she can to ensure that laws as they are supposed to be developed are developed. She's also working hard to ensure that the sign language becomes a 12th language. She's working hard to ensure that the policies on economic recovery and reconstruction also include persons with disabilities. And you'll be happy to know that the redistribution of the 700,000 hectares of land that the department worked with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development to ensure that the criteria takes into consideration women, youth and persons with disabilities. We have developed indicators that they took into consideration. So we thank you very much. Without wasting time, I would like to call the Deputy Minister. I think people from the media and people from the sector of persons with disabilities, they know this face because she's forever in the webinar, she's forever talking to them, she's forever advancing your cause. Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, DG, for steering the ship in a very ably and competent manner this morning. We appreciate your leadership all the times. I think you were just a few weeks in the office, but you made sure that you attend our webinar, which was focusing on the sector. And your availability today is really appreciated. Let me also acknowledge our Minister Nkoana-Mashabane, who really is also part of us in this journey of ensuring that we take this assignment very seriously. So even in her absence today, we acknowledge her contribution. The Director General has already acknowledged the ministerial staff and the officials from the department. And so we thank you, colleagues, for having made all the preparations, especially the communications team up to today, and the work you have done before in mobilizing the media is really appreciated. Maybe also it's important to acknowledge Benny. I nearly said Comrade Benny, because sometimes Benny talks like an activist, not a government official. So I'm glad that you have been on the ground, talking to the media, addressing radio stations and so on. It's really good. You know, what I've learned over years in government is that we all have to bring our own activism. We don't have to approach these issues with a tag of being a director, a chief director, or whatever, because we don't get where we want to be. So we appreciate your activism within the sector, and in the process, we have all learned a lot. The representative of the Presidential Working Group, Gauteng, I hope you'll be able to interpret that. We really appreciate the partnership. Presidential Working Group are not easy to work with because they pressurize the president by talking about issues that are not happening within the departments. So far, we've appreciated the partnership, and we want to make sure that even during this month, we forge that partnership, and we're all out there raising issues, conscientizing the public, but above everything, talking to difficult issues that they are perennial. In other words, they keep on coming back and they affect the sector in a negative way. Members of the media, I really want to thank you for patiently waiting and being with us this morning. And you know, as I was coming through to Pretoria, I was listening to the radio stations, just wanting to catch up and to know whether there's any radio station which will say, oh, today it's a start of a Disability Rights Awareness Month and so on. I mean, I had all sorts of conversations that, oh, can men be feminists? Can this be this? And I really enjoyed them, but I said, we need to work harder so as to make sure that this is not a fashionable issue to hold those who are in government accountable, but it's a fight that we use our media and communication platform also to raise these issues sharply so that we transform our society. This is one area which over years has been stubborn. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you have listened. And when you go out there, you will be able to assist us in articulating what we are trying to carry across South Africa. Well, it's always an honor and privilege for me, but today, even to give a keynote address as we launch the Disability Rights Awareness Month 2020. The theme is very, very important for us, which says, together building communities inclusive of disability rights. This is a further commitment that our communities cannot continue to exclude and marginalize persons with disabilities. Failure to create a society for all will ultimately be undermining our own legislation and policies which have been developed since the dawn of democracy in 1994, under our popular motto of saying, nothing about us without us. So it's a journey. It's a journey. It reminds me of what Utatu Madiba, our first president, used to say, that if you rise up the mountain, when you get there, you always find that there are many more mountains to climb. And I think this sector has taught us that very well. A year ago, we launched Disability Rights Awareness Month 2019. It was the first time launching this campaign under the new expanded mandate of the department. Since then, we've engaged with the sector at every opportunity, and we've been held to account where we seem not to be moving fast enough. But what really has been significant is that, this configured department of women, youth, and persons with disability, it has really created a strategic platform for us not to talk about gender equality and go 50 miles, and then we come back, we reflect on the inclusion of persons with disabilities rights, then we go all the way and start looking at youth. But the vulnerable groups who have been excluded and marginalized have been put under one telescope by the sixth administration, so that we work hard and raise their issues. Just to go back a bit, the South African Human Rights Commission noted a very critical point that persons with disabilities currently account for 5.1% of the population aged 5 years and older in South Africa, who continue to experience lack of access to adequate health and basic education and are at risk of economic exclusion. The sector is also particularly vulnerable to the compounded effects of discrimination and abuse. This is attributed to the entrenched negative beliefs and attitudes about the causes of disabilities. So the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities works very closely with a number of membership-based organizations, often referred to as disabled people organizations, that are run and managed by persons with disabilities. These organizations constitute the representative voice of persons with disabilities and are based on a respective membership demographics. They support the development of persons with disabilities capacities by providing them with a common platform to exchange and share their experiences and provide information on disability for their members and existing services, facilities, and provide support in general. Advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities is an ongoing task which requires all of us, government, public, private stakeholders, as well as the communities, to work together in ensuring that we are in defense of our constitution, legislation, white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities, UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the African Union Protocol on the Right of Persons with Disabilities, which we signed early in 2020, amongst other historical achievements. So we have to all defend those. But our role goes beyond advocating for change. It requires us to regulate, to ensure that persons with disabilities are at the center of government's program. We have to, DG, go beyond even mainstreaming the issue, but to have very sharp monitoring instruments so as to make sure that we don't have a cordial relationship with our colleagues in other government departments, but we have instruments that give us the facts to hold each other accountable. And I think that's where we are, where we must hold each other accountable, working in partnership with the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation, working in partnership with Public Service Administration, the department there, working in partnership with the Department of Employment, Labor, and so it's time we take a giant leap and move forward on these issues. I think enough has been said, as you had the historical perspective given by Benny Palime. The inclusion of disabilities in the 2019-2024 medium-term strategic framework, which constitutes the National Program of Action for the current administration, is a turning point, in particular for persons with disabilities, as it is for the first time that our interests as a sector and aspirations are reflected in the program of action at a strategic level. And I suppose basically what we're saying, it's a funded mandate, which is at the center of the nerve of government under the leadership of the president himself directly. I just need to quickly reflect and account on the lessons we've just learned since we're in this COVID, within this COVID pandemic. Since the onset of the COVID-19, different sectors have been affected in different ways. But the COVID-19 pandemic has deepened pre-existing inequalities, exposed the vulnerabilities of persons with disabilities. As early as April 2020, the department included disability mainstreaming in national state of disaster regulations so as to ensure the inclusion of persons with disabilities in all emergency interventions. I mean, I refer to it as a lessons learned because we're not ready, but we had to stand up quickly thanks to our officials in the department who really represented us well in all the work streams, ensuring that these issues are mainstreams, the specific vulnerability of persons with disability is not forgotten and thought about it when the issue is raised, but was put right at the center, that whatever disaster management we come up with, it should account in terms of how will it protect persons with disabilities. And I think that was very, very important. The department worked with our social partners, like the United Nations, UNFPA, and some of the private sectors. They come forward, Procter and Gamble, to name a few, to bring relief to persons with disabilities during this difficult time. The lockdown had cut off supplies to care centers, support facilities, old age homes, and similar organizations relying on the kindness of donors for support. Many of these organizations, which rely on donations, have been forced to let go of support staff or close their doors to the risk of infection from COVID-19. To mitigate against this, the department then secured and donated food hampers and sanitary packs to care centers and DPOs across the country. We visited some organizations like the Zwelopili Frail Care Center in Hillbrow and Forest Farm in Bryanston, and distributed care packages which included food items, treats for children, hand sanitizers, soaps, and face masks to centers caring for persons with disability. The department also secured donations of sanitary products which counted women with disabilities and mothers of children with disabilities amongst the beneficiaries. The consignment consisted of over 22,192 sanitary towels, 7,926 nappies, and washing powder packs were distributed between Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Eastern Cape provinces. But also, as it has been said, we held webinars which focus specifically on persons with disabilities and COVID-19 here in South Africa. Those webinars were really important because it allowed members of the sector to address us, not in an academic way, to talk to us about their experiences of COVID-19, the mental health issues that they had to struggle with, and explaining, there was a said, I always refer to this, somebody wrote for their children, the couple, both of them are persons with disability. Then they wrote for their children and said, during COVID-19, we might not be a priority if people had to be rescued, and you won't know how we died, trying to explain to children the predicament they were in. But I think, thanks God, the government was moving very fast in terms of spreading quarantine sites and ensuring that our hospitals were well equipped with all the required equipments to save lives. So we didn't have disasters where we felt, where we got reports that members of the sector were marginalized. So thanks to all the voices that spoke specifically about these issues. I'm really not going to talk about all the issues, all the interventions that were made in the interest of time, but I still want to mention this one point that together with PEN SALB, we also launched the Sign Language Charter in September 2020. The charter was informed by the challenges observed by the Cecil National Language Board that relate to communication, access to information, facilities, social justice by the deaf, including the type of services provided by Cecil interpreters in general. And I must say, during the launch of this charter, we just all admitted that while this issue of having the 12th language is there in the Constitution, although it's not developed, but here we are, after so many years, we are picking up on it and hoping that as soon as possible, the Parliamentary Working Committee working on this will get us there quickly now, so that our legislation addresses this, the sign language, the issue of the sign language as the 12th official language. The main theme, just quickly, together building communities inclusive of disability rights. And it has sub-themes. During week 1, 3 to the 7, we'll be looking at accelerating inclusive learning environments for persons with disabilities at all levels. I think the timing is perfect. We're dealing with matriculants who have been affected by COVID-19, but they're writing their exams now. The President and the Minister of Basic Education have wished them well, and we also want to really wish all our children with disabilities to write well and succeed, irrespective of what they've gone through. Week 2, 8 to 14, we're looking at the theme, rebuilding responsive disaster management strategies that places persons with disabilities at the center. Week 3, 15 to 21 November, we'll be looking at sub-theme, rebuilding an economy accessible to all persons with disability. I think the timing is perfect because the President is talking about the recovery plan of our economy, which will be inclusive and putting women, youth, and persons with disabilities at the center. Week 4, 22 November to 28 November, the sub-theme there is talking about creating an accessible justice system that seeks to address the risk of compounded marginalization and assisted decision-making legal framework. It will give us the opportunity to go to our courts, our police stations, and really experience what happens if a person with a disability were to come to those courts. Will they be heard? Will they find an interpreter? Will the environment be conducive? So we're not coming up with any new policy, but ours will be to monitor and to record whatever we felt is taking us backward. Week 5, 29 to 3 December, is a launch of 365 Disability Rights Awareness Campaign and outlining department's plans in promoting national priorities for the coming year. Ladies and gentlemen, the disability sector engages with government through the following consultative platforms. At an executive level, the Presidential Working Group on Disability, which consists of 45 sector representatives, inclusive of representatives from the majority of DPOs nationally, a few DPOs at local level, geographical impairment, representatives as well as individual experts with disabilities, children and with disabilities meet regularly to reflect on where the sector is. At a national level, again, we have, in terms of our machinery, we bring together national departments, provinces, SALCA, Chapter 9 institutions, and the sector. Similar structure exists in 8 of 9 provinces. Of course, we still have to work harder with the Western Cape and make sure that they come on board as well. On the program for the 3rd of December 2020, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, the department will host our state president, His Excellency, Mr. Dade Cyril Ramaphosa, to address the nation on this day and deliver a message of support and commemoration and celebration of achievements that have been gained. But also what I think we've come to like with the presidents, he sets targets. He raises the bar all the time. So much as we expect him to appreciate the achievements made, we expect him to set targets and raise the bar for us and say, do more. And we should all be prepared to pick up the message and make sure that we run. Women with disabilities and children are at higher risk of being victimized of gender-based violence in South Africa. We've spoken about that, and our understanding at the moment is that it's because from within the criminal justice system, the officials have not really been well prepared to understand the issue, and they've not been equipped through training and specialization to understand issues of trauma and mental health. Sometimes they were further victimizing people. You know, like if a woman, for instance, with a disability reported a sexual assault, and the police will be surprised and say, but there was no man who was looking at you. Aren't you happy that this has happened? And sometimes they will doubt the story of what they are telling. I mean, so there has been all sorts of practices on the ground that were not good. So as we enter the 16 days of activism, which is a UN campaign, it will give us an opportunity also to assess where are we in terms of our criminal justice in real terms, in numbers, equipments, to ensure that there's a clear understanding, especially at a community level, of the issues that affect persons with disability. We really call on every South African citizen, with or without a disability, private or public, government departments, local municipalities to hold hands with the department to ensure that together we continue to build communities inclusive of disability rights. The department would like to ensure that the disabled community in South Africa, that we as government will continue to advocate for their rights. The struggle for the realization of the right to equality and dignity for all, for persons with disability in South Africa, is not a by-the-way issue, is at the center of transformation, is at the center of the establishment of the society we want, the society we inherited and we desire, the society we desire to create and to put out there as a democratic country. We really, once more, in closing, I would like to thank all government departments for their effort in helping us in this journey, but to certainly say the call is for all of us to step up our efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. You have said a mouthful. I will not repeat what you've said, but I think all of us have heard. Just a few things that I would like to highlight, since all South Africans will be able to have access to this. It's just to say, I think it is critical for all of us to understand the discrimination and disadvantage that persons with disabilities suffer. Attitudes, social stigma, disrespect of their human rights and human dignity, lack of access to school. This week, the theme for this week is ensuring accelerating inclusive learning environment for persons with disabilities. Most children, our children start school at 5. I'm not even talking about early childhood development institutions, but actual school at 5 or 6. Most of children with disabilities start at 11 up to 14 years. They start, whilst others have started long ago. There's lack of access to amenities. So even the designers, when you design whatever work you do, you must always have the a person with disability in your mind. Transport, taxis don't stop for them. So when you plan a meeting or you decide on the time that the meeting has to start, you always have to take that into consideration, that when they come to meetings, sometimes persons with disabilities will struggle in terms of transport. Being subjected to continuous and repeated skills training. At the webinar that Minister talked to, Deputy Minister talked to, there was a lady who has a master's degree who says, I'm forever attending the SETA training, the skills program training, and I'm forever getting part-time jobs or temporary jobs. They're not getting jobs. So when we advertise, we need to specifically call persons with disabilities. Please be a sister. Be a sister to a person with disabilities. Also, these cultural beliefs and all those, you know that persons, the albinos, when we grew up, we used to hear that they disappear. And we didn't know when we grew up that they don't just disappear. They are subjected to cultural rituals. They are killed because of being an albino and all those things. So we need to learn and teach other communities that have those beliefs. It's important that we ensure that persons with disabilities are empowered and their dignity is respected. Without wasting time, I would like to call Ms. Mabato Ramompi, the media, the MLO, to come and facilitate the session of question and answers. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mabato Ramupi from the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. We are now going to open for question and answer session. But before we can do that, let me introduce the panel again. On the panel, we have the Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. We've got the Director General for Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, Advocate Joyce Maluleke. We've got Mr. Benny Balime, Acting Chief Director, Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And we also have Mr. Nkoana-Mashabane from the Presidential Working Group. Can you please identify yourself and the media house that you're coming from? What we'll do, we will start with the questions from the floor and followed by the ones that comes from outside, which will be forwarded on WhatsApp. Okay, do we have any question for the panel? Any question from the floor? Okay, if not, Jabu, can you read for us what we have on WhatsApp?
Thanks, Maransu. I have a question from Newsroom Africa. How challenging was COVID-19 for people living with disabilities? What relief measures have been put in place to ensure that they are assisted during this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jabu, for that. DM, do you want to take that? From here, DM.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for that question. I think it's a very, very important question because it's an experience of a lifetime. We were exposed or plunged into this COVID-19 with no regulations that were earmarked for persons with disabilities. So it was really a challenge in the sense that we had to hit the ground running. As I said earlier, we had to make sure that within the established work streams, in other words, the fora where the government departments were grouped together as work stream 1 up to 6, people were talking about what are within this stream, what are we going to do, and so on. So we made sure that these issues are mainstreamed. And also we pushed very hard to ensure that when the regulations were drafted, they were regulations that were specifically addressing the needs of persons with disabilities. I mean, a simple thing like most persons with disability, they relied on assistance, be it, if you know, for instance, some people, they rely on a dog when they are moving around. But all of a sudden, the regulation, COVID-19 regulation said people cannot walk even their dogs. So we had to intervene and to say, but some of our people will rely on these dogs for survival. And there was an issue of autistic children. I mean, in the regulations, they were not specifically catered for, but mothers of autistic children drew our attention that, you know, our children are going crazy. And, you know, they want to fight those who are teenagers because they are kept in an environment where they are missing the expected routines in their lives, and they don't understand why there's this. I'm just mentioning those two examples. And so also we realize that in some instances where when people were going out grabbing food parcels, there was no special allocation to say, let's have a dedicated day or times for persons with disabilities. Hence, I mentioned that we have to rely also on our partners from the United Nations to make sure that we get earmarked packs for cushioning persons with disabilities that we distributed at the right centers. So those are some of the interventions that I can mention just quickly. But I must say, the lessons learned have set a tone of what should happen in future whenever there's a disaster. So it's like we now have decided cases in South Africa, which is a major achievement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DM. Okay, before we take another question, do the DG wants to add on, or Mr. Palema, to what the DM have already responded to?
Yes, Mr. Palema will add.
Mr. Palema is coming to add on.
Thank you, DG. I want to just say that what the Deputy Minister said, it's actually summarizing all the work that we have done, but it was a major challenge. You know, when we got to the work streams, colleagues from the media, I was quite shocked. I went to the legal work stream. Huh? So I get there, I'm told, hey, we forgot disability, you know, hey, Batum. So I said, how do you forget such an important aspect of our work? You know, and I'm talking to almost 40 lawyers sitting in one room. And what I literally did, colleagues from the media, I gate crashed the meeting. I was not invited. And the DM said to me, hey, when are you going to put us in trouble? I said, DM, you're not going to be in trouble. I'm going to give you feedback. I gate crashed the meeting. I went in there and I spoke to those lawyers for 50 minutes, literally, taking them through all the laws and everything else that they must include in the regulations. Now, on the 2nd of April, DM gets a message from me to say, DM, we've got a regulation going. It's published. Please look at the Government Gazette. She checks and she finds it talks about the safety and protection of persons with disabilities. And that's where we started. Then we went into the other work streams, the economic work stream, the social impact work stream. We went into the border control work stream, the public health containment work stream, and we made a lot of noise. Now, DM says, I speak like a comrade. Hey, I'm sorry, that's how I am. So we went there, we made so much noise to an extent that when they do anything now, they would come and say, by the way, how do we kind of like draft that submission that we have to take to NCCC? Now, DG sits in the net joint. So when she got here, she calls me and says, hey, Dad, you know, I'm in the net joint. Can you explain to me how the work streams work? So I explained to her. And she says, hey, I've got a meeting on Sunday. So what do we do? When you get there, tell them what I told you. Went to the net, joined, she did exactly the same thing. And people thought, oh, now we are in trouble. So, but I think we are getting there. Look, we're not saying we made 100% achievement in terms of COVID-19, but fortunately we now have a group that is monitoring the impact of COVID-19 on persons with disabilities. We're working with the University of Pretoria, and we've got a team that is now working on the report. So we will provide you with a report as soon as it's available, so that you can look at it and see the impact. I must say it has been a bit difficult, honestly, to get going. I spent almost weeks and weeks and weeks. Sometimes DM would call me at 7 and say, hey, Awit, where are you? Hey, DM, I'm in a work stream. Okay. And I would have to now go home at 11 o'clock at night. But because I said, no, I'm not going anywhere until you do what I say. So that's how we approach them. But I'm glad that we were able to really get to this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Paleva. Okay, can we move to the next question?
Thanks, Maite. This question is directed to the DG. What are ways in which persons with disabilities can be included as we rebuild the economy during and post-COVID-19?
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying, as I indicated earlier on, that there's a lot of misunderstanding of what the mandate of the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities is. People think we implement. People will be asking you, there's no water in such a place. What are you doing? There's no whatever. We do not provide water. We do not build houses, but we regulate. And how do we regulate? For example, if you talk about water, the Department of Water will have developed legislation to ensure that people access water, but then we look at the legislation to see whether it mainstreams persons with disabilities or not. Then we facilitate that persons with disabilities are included. We also monitor whether persons with disabilities can access, so that we can write reports and say, we think we're not doing that. But also as government, you know that government has this an MTSF, medium-term strategic framework. It's a 5-year strategy where government outlines the 7 priorities of government in terms of what is it that is going to do for the next 5 years in order to ensure that it empowers South Africans, or it delivers to South Africans. So previously, the MTSF didn't mainstream women, young persons and persons with disabilities. Previously, even the National Development Plan didn't mainstream people. It just had one line where it said Department of Women will coordinate with the CGE in order to ensure that women benefit. That didn't mean anything. However, with the MTSF as a department, we have made sure that it mainstream all the 7 priorities, mainstream persons with disabilities, young persons, and women. You can download, because it's accessible from the website. You download the National Strategic Plan, the MTSF. You'll see that we have mainstream persons with disabilities, but also we monitor. We have indicators that we have developed to ensure that we monitor all government departments, but also, as I said, that the presidential working group for persons with disabilities, they also monitor. Now also what we're doing, we are coming up with policy to ensure that all government departments, you know that all government departments have got gender focal persons. A gender focal person is a person who's employed in a department who makes sure that those departments' plans in mainstream women. But most departments do not have the persons with disabilities focal points or young persons focal points. So as a department, we are developing policy to ensure that departments also have got those focal points. So that person, when they wake up, when they get to work, they make sure that the department that they work at mainstream persons with disabilities. So we're working on that. But also the other thing, unfortunately, we didn't invite DPSA, but we have agreed with the Department of, with the Director General of the Department of Public Service and Administration that we're going to write a joint cabinet memo and submit it to cabinet so that we can come up with a strategy of increasing employment of persons with disabilities in government. We want to make sure that we go, you know, a leap. We want to go, a leap bounds rather than now we employ 1 or 2 people or whatever. We just want to be able to come up with a strategy to ensure that within a certain space of time, we appoint as many persons with disabilities as we can. So those are some of the strategies that we are working on to ensure that persons with disabilities benefit from even the current economic recovery and construction program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. Do we have any other question on the floor?
No further questions. Thanks.
Okay, with that, thank you everyone for attending the launch. I would like to repeat the theme for Disability Rights Awareness Month 2020, together building communities inclusive of disability rights. The objective for the launch is to raise awareness to the range of disabilities that exist and that persons with disabilities are differently abled, but abled nevertheless. To begin a process of changing attitudes, behavioral change, especially within schools, campuses, places of work, places of worship, in areas like sports, etc., to raise attention to the impact of COVID-19 on persons with disabilities, to raise awareness to the weekly themes identified under the main theme, to celebrate the achievements of persons with disabilities in South Africa, to educate on increased risk of abuse that women and children with disability face. I thank you.